Next speaker is Brad Smith. Brad is the president and the CEO of Intuit, the position he has held since 2008. As you know, Intuit is the leading provider of financial and accounting software for small and mid-sized businesses, financial institutions, consumers, and accountants. And the company is also actively entering new areas such as health-related software. Brad joined Intuit in 2003 and was vice president and general manager of Intuit's Accountant Central and Developer Network. He was the head of the company's consumer tax group, which produces TurboTax. He was the senior vice president and general manager of Intuit's small business division before becoming CEO in 2008. Prior to joining Intuit, Brad was a senior vice president at ADP, and he is also a member of the board of directors of Yahoo, to which he was elected in June 2010. According to a recent magazine article that I read, Brad has some unorthodox management techniques and has been known to don costumes ranging from Roman soldier to Elvis Presley in the spirit of employee motivation. And it is a pleasure to introduce Brad Smith.
All right, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? I got a leveler on. I have to admit that I came from West Virginia and our family trees don't have a fork in it, so a lot of those behaviors you described are attributable to my upbringing. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I want to thank the Technology Policy Institute and thank Tom and then Carly who gave me a call, because Intuit has a long history of working with the leaders of this institute, and we're very proud of that association, and I'm excited to see it re-energized and going forward once again. I want to spend a little bit of time this morning just setting some context around Intuit and why Tom and the others felt it might be appropriate for us to speak to this group. I promise in advance it's not intended to be an Intuit infomercial, but it is intended to set some context around some of the things we've learned over a quarter of a century, and in particular working with the concept of innovation and working with those who are most important to innovation, which are the customers of innovation, consumers, and quite frankly, the catalyst of innovation, which are small businesses. And then after that, I want to share three major themes that we have come across as we've looked ahead at the future that I think are pertinent to everyone in this room. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the changing world around us. We've done some work with the Institute of the Future, looking at the trends that will affect consumers and small businesses globally over the next 10 years. That's factoring into our thinking and factoring into the way we're thinking about innovation overall. The second thing I'm going to talk about is the power of data. And data is one of these very controversial kind of topics when you talk about privacy and security, but the importance of data in fueling economic growth and also fueling innovation. And then last but not least, I'm going to talk about some emerging models of innovation that we see in the private industry that I think are pertinent to also public policy as well as not-for-profit. So hopefully I can get all that done in about 15 to 20 minutes. And without further ado, I want to start with the big topic on everybody's mind, which is innovation. I heard a lot yesterday and last night that I have to tell you we agree with wholeheartedly. The importance of policy around things that pertain to energy, pertain to R&D tax credits, pertain to tax policy as it results in repatriation of profits done offshore, the importance of education, absolutely germane. But I want to spend some time this morning talking about the importance of applied innovation as it affects the backbone of this world's economy, and that's Main Street, that's small business. And I'm going to share with you some examples of how actually innovation is applied, because sometimes when we hear the word innovation, we think of these beautiful double PhD R&D facilities where you're working on all the most sophisticated technology and it takes multiple years, when the truth is, if you're out in the valley, you'll see that 90% of innovation is Band-Aids and baling wire. And that ultimately leads to an outcome. So I want to share a little bit about the process of innovation. But let me do that by first setting some context around why Intuit. Why would we be here having the conversation today? Well, you may know us by the products that Tom used during the introduction. TurboTax, tax software product that enables a consumer, a citizen, to actually fulfill their tax obligation while also putting maximum money back in their pocket, 350 deduction prompts. Quicken, the product the company was founded on 27 years ago by our founder, Scott Cook, that helps families figure out what they're spending every week and have a pie chart and set up a budget. It returned over $400 million of savings back to consumers last year in the world's worst economic downturn. And then QuickBooks, which was the first accounting software without the accounting in it. We discovered about 18 years ago that a lot of people went to accounting classes, but no one paid attention. And so small businesses went in to sell candles. They didn't want to figure out how to do accounting, so we tried to come up with a solution to do that. These products all enjoy a strong market position with a lot of growth. But more importantly, they've given us access to something very important. First, 50 million consumers and small businesses who use these products. This is Main Street. We all know the stats. 70% of the United States economy is driven by consumer consumption. Today, about 60% of all jobs in the United States are employed in companies with fewer than 50 employees, and 8 out of 10 new jobs will be created in the small business sector. The same thing holds true whether you're talking about here, you're talking about the UK, you're talking about India. This is the backbone of the world's economy. And I can tell you they have a pretty big impact. So if I can get this to click. These are just some of our stats, and we certainly do not have the lion's share of the market. But today, the small businesses who use our small business products represent $2.6 trillion of the United States GDP. That's 1/5 of the US GDP. Flows through 7 million small businesses who use our products. And today, 1/3 of all the tax returns in the United States come through TurboTax and our related products. So clearly a pretty big economic impact on the US, and the same thing holds true across the globe. Now, what I want to do is shift from that, because that's just intended to give you context around the importance of consumers and small businesses, which I know is not lost in this audience. But I want to talk about innovation. We're a company who actually explicitly declared 27 years ago that this would be our secret sauce to trying to solve the world's most important problems. It's so important to us that we have it in our mission statement. The rest of the words on the slide don't matter. It's just the stuff up there in red. We seek to be an innovative growth company that helps change people's lives so profoundly they can't imagine going back to the old way. Pretty aspirational, pretty lofty. It's so important to us that we've had 6 values that have guided our company for a quarter of a century, and the number 4 value is to innovate and improve. Every employee's job is to leave something better than they found it, whether it's an existing service or a customer's way of doing business. And we've gone to school on what does innovation mean. And I have to tell you, when I had the chance to step into this job in January 2008, I got introduced to some CEOs, and A.G. Lafley at the time was the CEO of Procter & Gamble. And he's down in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I grew up just outside of Huntington, West Virginia, and I was so excited to meet somebody who was just 2 hours away. So I sat down and I picked his brain, and I said, hey, what do you think about innovation? And he chuckled, and he said, I actually love being in the Midwest. And I said, what's that have to do with innovation? He said, because the guys on the East Coast think that if you put it in a spreadsheet, it'll come true. And the guys on the West Coast think if you sit around on a mountaintop long enough, lightning will strike and hit a bottle and Google will come out. And in the middle, we actually believe it's a combination of inspiration and rigor. And we apply innovation as a factory process. And so, quite candidly, that gave us the sort of construct that we need to drive innovation in our company. And I want to give you a snippet of what we think about when we talk about innovation and how it actually happens in the Valley. When you heard Reid Hoffman talk yesterday, and we have Entrepreneur Day, and we invite 68 entrepreneurs into Intuit last week for a 20-minute vignette to present to us their best ideas to see if we can help them. This is how it happens. The first thing is a concept called customer-driven innovation. It is quite simply looking for a big, important problem that hasn't been solved well, and then finding a solution that is easier and a better value than any alternative in the market. Sounds simple. It's hard. And I'll tell you what we've learned through trial and error, because we get it wrong a lot more than we get it right. It is not about market research. It is about observation and sound effects. In the company and in the Valley, there's a concept called Follow Me Homes. Follow Me Homes are where you get the chance to be invited into the consumer's household or into the small business. You're not a stalker. They actually let you come in and you observe them through the day. Some people call this ethnography, where you're actually going out and you're anthropology, you're watching the human behavior. But what you do is you observe when they furrow their brow, when they jot a note down on a Post-it note, they pick up a cell phone, or the kid runs into the home office, interrupts the mother or father, and runs back out. That's reality in the consumer and the small business world. And then you try to come back and figure out how you're going to solve that problem. That's the inspiration piece. Quite frankly, that's the easiest piece. If you see the studies just done by Harvard Business School, 7 out of 10 CEOs of Fortune 500 companies believe they're pretty good at getting ideas. Only 1 out of 10 believe they're any good at executing them. And here's where the execution process comes in. There's this concept called design for delight. Design for delight has 3 steps. The first, take that deep customer empathy and understanding, whether you're listening on the phones, you're talking to farmers in India, which is Scott Cook in the upper right-hand corner there, you're actually visiting their offices, and you get the chance to just truly walk in the customer's shoes. The old quote, in order to walk a mile in somebody else's shoes, you have to first remove your own, is what this is all about, truly immersing yourself in the customer's world. Here's where the magic comes in. Then you take that inspiration, you come back, and you get a team of diverse opinions in a room. They all talk about what side of the elephant they saw. And then you come up with at least 7 ideas before you narrow in on one. It's called go broad to go narrow. And the important outcome of this process is to come out with the roughest, ugliest prototype that you can take back to the customer and ask them to take a look at. And I'll tell you where I learned this lesson early in my career. I worked for Pepsi right out of college, got my college degree, I was all excited, and they gave me my job, and I got the chance to manage 10 Teamsters who delivered soft drinks to the supermarket starting at 4 a.m. And I remember saying, this is what I went to college for. But we get out there, and we're building displays before the big ad hits for Kroger, and I'm just trying to show this salesperson how I know how to build displays, college degree, I'm a hard worker. I stack it out to the top, and it's perfect. And before we get in the truck to go to the next store, this professional salesman comes up and takes 4 cases off and makes it all jagged and leaves. I said, wait a minute, it was perfect. He said, you don't get it, Brad. No consumer will shop that display if it looks like it's aesthetic as opposed to usable. This is called a starter gap. The rougher it looks, the more people will start to shop it. The rougher the prototype, the more people will feel encouraged to participate. So coming out here, you want a rough prototype. And then the last thing is, you get your customer in the kitchen and they help you iterate. That is the concept, as ugly as it may feel, around innovation in the Silicon Valley. Innovation is applied by Intuit, but we sit with all the other CEOs in the Valley and we try to understand, hey, how are you good at this or that? And we share the appropriate amounts of information without the inappropriate, despite what the rumors may be. And we try to talk about how we can get better. With that context, which is consumers and small businesses and the rough and ugly process to innovation, I want to share with you some journeys and some scars and some lessons that we've experienced in the technology industry that have a direct impact on the policy decisions being made, also on the conversations we're having here amongst ourselves. The first is some of the insights we've gained by working with smarter people than us, the Institute of the Future, to talk about these macro trends that, quite frankly, are transformational, that are occurring across the globe. The first, we are in the midst of perhaps the greatest demographic shift in recorded history. When you take a look at the transformation occurring in the consumer and the small business segment, there are 5 faces emerging in the economies around the world. The digital generation is coming of age. They grew up with cell phones, PlayStations. They have no risk. They actually have learned an entire world of if they didn't like how the game finished, they pressed restart and start again. Now when you survey kids coming out of high school, 8 out of 10 want to go to work for themselves. 10 years ago, 8 out of 10 wanted to go to work for a great company like an Intuit, a Google, or a Microsoft. This is a season of entrepreneurs. They are changing the face of the world around us. The second thing that's changing, you've heard a lot about, it's the way value is being created. Business models are being turned on their head. This generation wants to participate in not only buying the product, but contributing and creating the product. Think of YouTube. Think of social media. Think of how eBay has buyers and sellers that are basically customers on both sides. This business model, by the way, often originates with free. And that creates a whole bunch of questions and concerns if you're looking at it from afar, but it actually creates a whole bunch of opportunity and competitiveness if you're in the midst. The third is the technological shift. Need to spend very little time on this other than the fact that we have seen the transformation where computing now happens in the palm of our hand with GPS devices that are location aware, and that is changing the way we can deliver value for customers. And last but not least is geography. We don't need to look any further than this recession to recognize we're a global economy. One country sneezed, the rest of the world got sick. It hit us hard when we did a survey of the small businesses in the United States with fewer than 20 employees who use our product. And we discovered 37% of those companies are doing business globally. This is not big companies are global and little businesses are local. Competitors are coming into the market from every corner of this world because with hosted technologies, there are no barriers. So those are the big shifts occurring in the marketplace today. I want to shift to the second topic that feeds off of this, which is the importance of connected services. Connected services is the entire transformation of all four of these things coming together, moving away from paper-based, brick-and-mortar-bound, human-produced services to a world where consumers and small businesses turn to their digital devices, whether in the palm of their hand or they're an iPad, to be able to solve the most important problems. The secret sauce to a connected services world is data. Now, this is one of those terms that sounds clinical and academic when you talk about data. I just want to give you an illustration of a real customer and the importance of data and how not one company, but how multiple products have been brought together to solve this customer's problem. This is a small business in the United States, actually located in Idaho, manufacturing company. Customer uses one of our products, but more importantly, uses a lot of people's products. And this individual small business owner is representative of the 7 million kinds of customers we get a chance to work with every day, or the 27 million in the US, the 350 million around the globe. They deal with something called data. It's their customer information. It's their sales information. It's their employee information. It's their supplier information. It's their tax obligations. And it exists in everything from a 3-ring binder to a Post-it note to a file in some computer to some Outlook contacts. It is all over the place. And when you talk to the small business owner and you say, what's the one thing we could do to help you improve your life, be more productive, provide better customer service, their answer is, can you find a way to get all this to work together? Now, there have been a lot of ways people have tried to solve this. Vertically integrating, hey, I'll just own the end-to-end stack. You buy my solution, everything works well together. To APIs, you name it, we've been trying to solve this particular problem for many, many, many years. But now, where we sit today, it's becoming more doable. I'll give you an illustration really quickly. Everybody's heard the concept of mobile. We had to turn our mobile phones off a few minutes ago because it was disrupting up here. I want to show you the concept of mobile as it applies to small business. This is mobile. Millions of small businesses in the US alone, not counting the globe. This is the definition of mobile. They're carpet cleaners, they're landscapers, they're carpenters, they're housekeepers, they're painters. You go on and on and on. And they have 3 things that make their business model work. Somebody in the office works with a customer, schedules an appointment. Somebody gets in some sort of a mobile vehicle, goes out to that place, does the work, and then somebody back in the office takes all that, keys it in, and makes sure that it flows through all the systems, and you reconcile everything from payroll to accounting to billing the customer. That is a mobile device. And when you go out and you do these follow me homes and you spend this time observing what the customer's doing, we ask them, what is your database that powers this kind of business? This, by the way, is 60% of the US small business, is service-based businesses like this. They'll show you their database. In 2010, this is their database. No kidding, this is their database. Whiteboards, who's supposed to be where, and heaven forbid that somebody smudges their tushy against it because you've lost all the information that you needed. And it happens all the time. So engineers sit down from a company and say, how can we solve this problem? And I'm going to show you a real example of how this problem is being solved today. You can take this whiteboard, and by using technology that already exists, like Microsoft, you can create a wonderful project plan that basically shows you the same thing, which driver's at what place. You click on it, and you can actually get the details of what's the work to be done, who's the contact there, and what's their phone number. You take that piece of technology, and you overlay the GPS capabilities in mobile devices, whether it's in their van or it's in their mobile device, and you put Google Earth on, you can now show the person back in the office how fast the van's traveling from point A to point B. No more of this cable, the old cable days where it'd say, hey, we'll be at your house between 1 and 5. You know, we can actually tell you, hey, they're driving 56 miles an hour, just 1 mile over the speed limit, but they're getting there as fast as they can. And we'll be here by this time. And it gets better. Because of mobile devices, and I purposefully chose BlackBerry, not to offend my Google friend or Apple or anybody else, but mobile devices of any kind have the ability now to push this kind of information off of that virtual whiteboard with the GPS technology right out to the mobile device. And then last but not least is, with services like our own, you can actually conclude the transaction, accept a credit card payment, send an email receipt, and do all that right there from the person's home, and it reconciles back with your accounting software and sends all the information that you need out. By the way, this wonderful, magnificent hodgepodge of innovation is transforming small businesses, and it costs small businesses less than $200 a year. That is how much it costs to buy this kind of a technology, and the change to their productivity, the change in their ability to actually grow their customer base is enormous. That is how innovation applies to Main Street. Now, I'm going to talk a minute about the fuel behind that, which is the data. Data is an important conversation, most importantly because it doesn't belong to any of us as a company, it belongs to the customer. And I believe that data will be mission critical for us to drive the economic growth and the success of the entrepreneurial dream, or to help consumers if we treat the data the way the data is designed to be treated, which is with the customer's permission. It requires every one of us to safeguard that relationship, both technologically but also explicitly. Explicitly in ways that companies today are debating, policymakers are debating, and my fear is we're going to go beyond do no harm and get into an area where we're going to actually restrict innovation. And I would put forth, there's two very simple premises that I see emerging that I hope will guide logic as we think about this particular topic. One, it needs to be rooted in your culture and your values. You need to understand what is right and what is wrong when it comes to data. And the second is a little more pragmatic than that. If you always default to the fact that the customer has the choice of what they do and don't want somebody to do with their data, then you're better off than having a lot of other people trying to figure it out for the customer. Now, I know this is controversial, so be more than happy at some point to have this conversation, but that's the hypothesis that I put forth. But I think the importance is to see the power of data for someone like a small business owner who is out in a van delivering services. That is the secret sauce to their livelihood and their productivity. Now, I want to wrap up with the last of my topics. There are two new models that I see emerging when it comes to innovation and the role of policymakers, private industry, not-for-profit. And I get a little chagrined at times when there's a lot of conversation around the lines of demarcation of where one stops and one starts. And I would actually challenge us to say there's actually another model, which is where do we collaborate together to create greater social benefit than we could if we were apart. Here's two examples. The first is big and small companies. You heard a lot of that conversation earlier when we're talking about antitrust and does size matter and when does this come in to be a competitive differentiator versus a competitive deterrent. Well, here's three examples of big and small working together to create innovation on behalf of a greater social good. I mentioned A.G. Lafley earlier and Procter & Gamble. Back in the early 2000s, they began a concept called Connect and Develop, which basically recognized in a company as great as Procter & Gamble, with all the PhDs they had, they could never come up with all the solutions to solve their customers' problems. So they laid a gauntlet down that said 50% of all the innovation they would deliver to market would not be developed by Procter & Gamble, but would actually come through partnerships and alliances and somebody else outside. That gave birth to the Swiffer. We've all seen the Swiffer, the mop standing in the closet now. No one wants to love the mop anymore. That didn't come from Procter & Gamble, but it came through the Connect and Develop concept that Procter & Gamble embraced. Another example is Apple. We know Apple came out with the iPhone. They quickly got to 4 million users, but they recognized the importance of apps. And so they opened up a developer network and had 1 billion downloads of apps in literally no time. No one's been able to catch up with that by tapping into the innovation of others. We're doing the same thing with a partner platform, basically enabling people to work with the 7 million small businesses we have or the 27 million consumers and have their products solve problems that we're never going to build a product for, but do it in a way that enriches the life of our customers. Why is this important? I don't know if you know this stat, but we're reminded of it every day because we serve entrepreneurs. There are 13 times more patents per employee created by small businesses with fewer than 50 employees than there are in the largest, most innovative companies that we could all name today. That's how much innovation is happening in the small business world. They understand the local markets, they understand the specialized niche, and if we don't find a way to tap in and facilitate that innovation in a collaborative process, then I think we're going to miss the boat, not only as a country, but across the globe. So that's one way. The other way is partnerships between public policy, private industry, and not-for-profit. I think this is magic. We have seen it work time and time again. Public policy sets the charter for what's important to its citizens. Private industry comes with core competency in technology and innovation and can move fast. And not-for-profit has that local trusted relationship that can bring all the parties together. And when you bring that together, you create a magical intersection that no one group can do on their own. And I would encourage us to not spend as much time trying to divide up who does what, but trying to find a way to come together on some bigger goal. And this is not something that's pie in the sky. We've seen all kinds of examples. Amber Alert was probably the most recognized and the first in bringing these kinds of groups together to do a very important thing for society, to locate lost children, potentially kidnapped children and young adults. Another example that's in my space, and I'll just touch on it quickly, is the Free File Alliance, which is government's desire to ensure that taxpayers have access to an easy and low-cost way to fulfill their tax obligation. So the industry got together, and now between the industry, who donates the product for people who are underprivileged, underserved, serve in the military, or have access to earned income tax credit, we donate the software, the government builds the portal so they get access to it, and then we actually go out in local communities and we get college kids to help us do taxes for people who may not be computer literate. 30 million tax returns have been done for free to the consumer, and no cost to the public treasury. That is a good thing for everybody involved. The big challenge is, well, how do I get ideas to inspire me to go find a way to collaborate in this way? And I would just point you to two very simple documents. These two pieces inspire us. Whether it's Dr. Joseph Stiglitz's piece or it's the Center for Digital Government, there's all kinds of ideas of how public policy as well as private industry and not-for-profit could come together. I had the chance last year to be invited to speak to the National Governors Association. And I challenged myself and my fellow captains of the private industry, as well as the public policy leaders and the not-for-profit, to look for more ways like this to come together. We can solve these issues if we actually start to trust that there's a bigger game to play than the one we're trying to do now to kind of do a checks and balance between all the parties. So I'll wrap up. You can probably tell I tend to be an optimist. I would say a pragmatic optimist. We are in some rocky times. There's a lot going on in terms of conversation. There's a lot going on in terms of the recession. There's a lot going on in terms of confidence in our own country's ability to compete. I would tell you that we have all that it takes. We've got a lot of work to do to get back on our game. Like Paul said last night, we've got to invest in education. We're going to have to make sure we don't have things that are getting in the way of innovation. But I do fundamentally believe in the core of the country, and I believe in the core of entrepreneurs, and I believe in the core of innovation overall. And I think our best days are also ahead of us if we simply embrace it. So that is a Silicon Valley point of view. I'll wrap up with my little 15, 20 minutes and open it up to any questions you may have. Thank you. We don't have to wake anybody. We just...
Hi, Rick Lane, News Corp. You mentioned that you work with a lot of small businesses. Obviously, you have great products. I use them myself.
Thank you.
But I'm wondering, there's a lot of discussion in D.C. about the expiration of the Bush tax cuts and the impact on small businesses and what that may have, the impact that will have on the economy in general. From your perspective, and working with a lot of small businesses, what do you think of the impact what will the impact actually be on small businesses, either people not being able to spend money for house repairs and things of that nature, or just in terms of their own income?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I don't need to tell this group, small businesses are really hurting right now. But I'll also tell you, in terms of optimism, small businesses have figured out a way to fight through everything. They start a business knowing that 9 out of 10 will fail in the first year. And so they're pretty sure they're not going to be the 9 out of 10. So they find a way to navigate everything. What's happening right now, I would say the biggest issue impacting small businesses, that is certainly one. There's uncertainty around health care. There's a whole bunch of uncertainty. But their biggest issue is they can't get access to lines of credit. The average small business starts their company on a credit card, a home equity loan, or a line of credit. And as long as banks are trying to do the right thing to make sure they're making good investments, small businesses aren't starting. If you look at the last 4 downturns, when unemployment spikes, small business formations go up because individuals take control of their own destiny and say, no more will I get laid off again. I'm going to take my control in my own hands. It hasn't happened this time. Small business formations are actually half of what they were before the downturn because they can't get access to credit. So I would say if there's any single thing we could do for small businesses to get them back on their feet, it's open up access to lines of credit. Yes?
Knowing that, then why is it that we're having such a difficult time then tapping into credit? I mean, if our banking institutions understand how valuable the small business is to our, I wouldn't even say national economy anymore, it's our global economy, why is there such a reluctance or resistance by finance to actually provide these needed loans?
Yeah, I think it's a prisoner's dilemma. We're upset and frustrated with the banking industry as consumers across the globe because we felt like they took things on that were very risky. And there were a whole bunch of convoluted financial mechanisms that we potentially didn't understand. And so we come down hard. There's a lot of legislation. We're going to oversee that industry. And if you look at one of the riskiest investments you can make, it's a small business. Just described the odds a few minutes ago. You heard the VC quotes. You know, only 10% of those companies VCs invest in actually succeed. The most popular book in the Silicon Valley was written by Randy Commissar, who works for Kleiner Perkins. It's called Getting to Plan B, because Plan A almost never works in a small business. You have to go to Plan B. So short and long of it is, why aren't we doing more? I think there is a lot of conversation. The administration's talked about it. The banks are stepping up and doing it. We're working very hard to try to create everything from ways to get access to credit to peer-to-peer lending. It's not an easy problem to solve, but I will tell you, if we don't find a way to solve it, then we have a self-fulfilling prophecy in terms of economic growth, because 8 out of 10 all new jobs get created by small businesses, and we have got to get them back on their feet. Right now, they're hiring at an average of 0.2% more this month than they were last year. That's a 2.4% annual employment rate. That is anemic. That will not get us back on our feet if we can't find a way to get them the access to credit. I wish I had an answer. I can understand the reasons why it's a dilemma today, but we have got to find a way to fight through it. Ed?
The economy, again, is the topic.
Wait for the,
Okay.
and then also identify.
Ed Black with CCIA. Focusing still on the economy, mostly in the past when we've had economic downturns, a sector, sometimes the tech sector, has helped lead us out of it. In fact, this time, we actually have a number of tech companies reporting very good results. You is certainly one. And yet, the energy, the dynamic, that leadership capability to inspire and give optimism to others isn't there. Do you think there is still that opportunity for tech industry maybe to play more of a leading role in getting self-confidence back? I mean, it seems to me an awful lot of our economic problem right now is not really the fundamentals, although they're not great. It is psychological. It is a self-fulfilling uncertainty and pessimism, and frankly, getting some sector to say, hey, you know what, we really still see the future pretty good, and we're moving there, just might help.
Yeah, Ed, I do, and I also agree 100% with the statement. I think we're in a self-fulfilling prophecy right now, the more we talk about the bleak numbers that are coming out. But when you look at the CEOs of the companies, and I think Paul mentioned last night, 75% of the S&P 500 who reported earnings actually exceeded earnings. We had a earnings call last week, and we had very strong results. The technology industry overall is having very strong results. But what you hear us trying to do and communicate is, while we can't tell you whether this is going to be a double dip or if it's going to be a Nike swoosh and be a long, protracted recovery, all we can tell you is that we're finding ways as a country or as a globe to persevere. We're finding ways to survive in this tough, choppy time. And I will tell you, my gut is it's getting better. And my gut is not based upon no data. It's based upon the fact that these small business owners right now, the average consumer, is starting to charge more again at the small businesses. Small businesses are hiring. It's only 0.2%, but it's still 350,000 jobs a year. And you can start to see the momentum coming back. A year ago, it wasn't that. It was actually in negative territory. I just don't think we're on a steep slope, but we are coming back. And I do think it takes us being more proactive in our communications, but it's also going to take some patience. Yep.
Any more questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks, Tom.